Listen to me, love isn't about comfort. It's about growth. It's about evolution. It's about becoming so aligned with truth that you refuse to shrink to make someone else feel safe in their own fear. You want to keep someone who runs from closeness? Don't chase them, challenge them, because the moment you start chasing, you reinforce their story, I am not safe when people get close. But the moment you stand your ground, when you say through your energy, I will not abandon myself to keep you, something shifts. Their nervous system feels the stability it's been craving all along. You become the rock in the storm of their uncertainty. Avoidants are not heartless. They're hurting. They built distance as a fortress because once upon a time, connection meant pain. But here's the truth, if you keep tiptoeing around their walls, you help them keep those walls intact. The only way to reach their soul is to challenge the story that built those walls in the first place. Challenge doesn't mean aggression. It means presence. It means holding your boundary with love. It means saying, I see your fear, but I refuse to play small because of it. You see, relationships are divine classrooms. Every connection mirrors what we still need to heal, what we still need to awaken to. And when you meet an avoidant, the universe is inviting you to master the art of unconditional strength. When you challenge an avoidant, you say, I will love you, but I will not enable your avoidance. I will hold space, but I will not disappear. That's divine love. It doesn't suffocate and it doesn't surrender its truth. It awakens. It calls forth the highest self in both people. And here's what happens when the avoidant feels that energy unshakable, authentic, compassionate. They begin to question their pattern. They start to feel something they haven't felt before, safety within connection. That's when transformation begins. That's when love stops being a battlefield and starts becoming a sanctuary. So stop trying to be what you think they need. Be what truth demands. Be firm, be kind, be radiant, because when you challenge with love, you don't just keep them, you help heal them. Love is not found in chasing or pleasing. It's found in standing so rooted in your worth that you become a mirror of possibility. You teach them, through your example, that closeness is not a threat, it's freedom. So if you want to keep an avoidant, don't fear their distance. Don't bend your light to fit their shadows. Challenge them to step into the light with you. Because love isn't about finding someone who never runs, it's about becoming someone worth running toward. Avoidance is often misunderstood. When someone pulls away, withdraws emotionally, or shuts down, our first instinct is to take it personally, believe their distance is a reflection of our worth, or proof that they don't care. But that's not what's really happening. Avoidance isn't rejection. It's protection. It's a defense mechanism that formed long before you entered the picture. Built PI. Easy by piece, through experiences that taught this person one painful lesson: closeness can hurt. So they built a shield, not to keep you out, but to keep themselves safe. That shield can look like detachment, silence, or indifference. It can sound like, I just need space, or I don't want to talk about this right now. And while it may seem cold or calculated, beneath that distance lies fear of being consumed, controlled, or disappointed again. People who develop avoidant tendencies often grew up in environments where vulnerability wasn't rewarded. Maybe they had to be self-sufficient too early. Maybe love was inconsistent, present one moment, withdrawn the next. So they learned to rely on themselves and suppress their needs. To them, independence equals safety. When that person enters a relationship, their nervous system still operates by those same old rules. Intimacy feels like danger. Connection feels like risk. Their body remembers the emotional chaos of needing someone who couldn't meet them fully. So when things start to feel too close, too intense, or too demanding, their instinct is to retreat. It's not that they don't feel love, it's that love awakens old memories of pain. If you interpret their withdrawal as a personal rejection, you feed the cycle. You chase harder, they pull back further. You take their distance as a challenge to prove your worth, they feel overwhelmed by your pursuit. This dance continues until both of you are exhausted and disconnected. But if you understand that avoidance is a shield, not a wall, everything changes. You begin to see that what they truly need isn't more pressure, it's presence. Not pursuit, but patience. They don't need someone to force their guard down. They need someone grounded enough to make that guard unnecessary. When you realize this, you stop reacting to the behavior and start addressing the emotion beneath it. You start meeting their fear with calm energy instead of anxiety. You start respecting their space without abandoning your truth. You stop saying, "Why are you pulling away?" and start saying, "I sense you're protecting yourself, and that's okay. I am not going anywhere, but I won't chase either." That kind of energy doesn't just challenge the avoidant, it soothes them. It speaks to the part of them that wants to trust again but doesn't know how. Remember, avoidance is not a sign of emotional incapacity. It's a sign of emotional survival. It's the body's way of saying, "I've been here before, and it hurt." And when you approach it with empathy instead of frustration, you create the environment where real connection can take root. But empathy doesn't mean enabling. It doesn't mean walking on eggshells or accepting emotional neglect. It means seeing the shield for what it isn't, refusing to reinforce it with your own fear, because the moment you internalize their distance, you start building your own shield too. You start mirroring their avoidance, or worse, resenting it. And now two people, both afraid of being hurt, are protecting themselves from the very love they crave. Someone has to break the pattern. Someone has to hold steady in presence, in truth, in self-worth. Avoidance is a shield, but every shield has a handle, something to hold on to when fear takes over. When you bring awareness, compassion, and unwavering boundaries, you help the avoidant realize they no longer need to hide behind it. That's when true intimacy begins, not when the shield disappears, but when it becomes unnecessary. When safety is no longer found in distance, but in the connection itself. Challenge awakens presence. It stirs something dormant within a person who has learned to disconnect when things get uncomfortable. For someone with avoidant tendencies, withdrawing is their default mode. It's how they self-soothe, how they regain a sense of control. They retreat into silence, into independence, into emotional isolation. But when they meet someone who challenges them not through conflict, but through grounded energy and emotional clarity, it interrupts that pattern. Challenge becomes the spark that calls them back into the moment, that says, "Stay here. You're safe to feel. You don't need to run." Avoidants are often masters of disengagement. When tension arises, their nervous system signals danger, and the instinct to flee kicks in, sometimes physically, but more often emotionally. They might change the subject, distract themselves with work, or create distance through detachment. What they're really doing is escaping the intensity of vulnerability. The irony is that what they fear most, true intimacy, is also what they crave most. They want connection, but on terms that feel safe, predictable, and within their control. The challenge is that real connection doesn't thrive under control. It thrives under presence, and presence is born when we are lovingly challenged to stay instead of flee. Challenge, in this sense, isn't confrontation. It's an invitation to rise. It's the act of saying, through your energy and your boundaries, I see you hiding, and I'm not going to chase you, but am also not going to disappear. That's power. That's love with a backbone. The avoidant expects you to either collapse into people-pleasing or lash out in frustration. But when you do neither, when you stand your ground with compassion, you disrupt their pattern. You challenge their belief that closeness equals loss of control. This is why challenge is so awakening. It introduces a new experience, one their nervous system doesn't yet have a blueprint for. They expect pressure, but you offer stability. They expect chaos, but you bring calm certainty. They expect to be either smothered or abandoned, but you choose a third path, connection with boundaries. This consistency teaches them that relationships don't have to trigger their flight response, that they can remain present even when emotions run high without losing themselves. Presence is the medicine to avoidance, and challenge is the catalyst that brings it forth. It's not Eno. To simply love and avoidant love without challenge becomes background noise. They tune it out because it feels too familiar to the kind of love that demanded nothing of them. But when love carries strength, when it says, I love you too much to let you hide from yourself, it commands attention. It shakes their soul awake. It tells them that this connection isn't about control, it's about growth. When you challenge an avoidant, you help them confront the part of themselves they've buried. You invite them to step into emotional responsibility, to stay open, to communicate, to choose connection even when it feels risky. You're not fighting them. You're fighting the illusion that distance keeps them safe, and as they rise to meet your energy, they begin to feel something they haven't felt in a long time: aliveness. Challenge reintroduces emotion, vitality, and depth. It reminds them that avoiding pain also means avoiding joy, and that the cost of safety is numbness, but the key is intention. Challenge without love feels like control, and that will only reinforce avoidance. The challenge must come from a place of empathy and faith. You're not punishing them for their distance, you're guiding them back to presence. You're saying, I believe you're capable of more. I believe you can meet me here. That belief alone can be transformative. It's the moment their soul feels seen, not managed. This kind of challenge demands that you remain present too. You can't challenge avoidance from your own insecurity or fear of loss. You must stand in self-awareness, holding space without collapsing into neediness, because your energy becomes a template for theirs. If you stay calm, open, and anchored in love, you invite them to match that state. And in that shared space of grounded connection, avoidance begins to lose its power. So when you challenge an avoidant to stay presento, face the discomfort, to speak instead of retreat, you're not just changing behavior. You're rewriting their emotional code. You're teaching them that love can be both safe and passionate, both challenging and nurturing. You're awakening them from emotional sleep and showing them that presence, not distance, is where true freedom lives. Certainty creates attraction. It is one of the most magnetic forces in human connection. When someone is avoidant, they live in a world of uncertainty about emotions, about safety, about the intentions of others. They are constantly scanning for signs that closeness might lead to pain, that vulnerability might lead to disappointment. In that inner turbulence, they are drawn almost unconsciously to what feels grounded, stable, and sure. Certainty becomes their anchor. It speaks to the deepest part of their nervous system, the part that longs for safety but doesn't know how to create it on their own. Certainty is not arrogance. It's not the loud proclamation that says, I know everything. It's the quiet, steady energy that says, I know who I am. It's the kind of presence that doesn't ASE approval, doesn't crumble when met with resistance, and doesn't abandon itself to maintain peace. For someone avoidant, that energy is magnetic because it feels like the one thing they've never truly known: security within connection. While they may appear indifferent or detached, inside they are testing the world around them for emotional stability. They're asking, can I trust this? Will this person still be here if I pull back? Will their energy hold steady if mine wavers? When you embody certainty, you answer those questions without words. Your presence communicates safety in a way logic never could. You become the calm in their storm. Avoidants are not drawn to chaos, even if their behavior sometimes creates it. They're drawn to peace that holds firm under pressure. The moment you start doubting yourself, over-explaining, or bending your truth to keep them close, they feel that instability. They sense the wobble, and it triggers their instinct to retreat. Not because they don't care, but because uncertainty or theirs feels unsafe. Certainty also sets the tone for emotional polarity. In every meaningful relationship, there's a dance between the energies of grounding and expansion, stability and freedom, assurance and exploration. The avoidant carries within them a strong need for autonomy, for control over their emotional space. When they meet someone who can hold their own ground without trying to control theirs, attraction deepens. They begin to relax into the connection because they feel the other person's emotional independence. Your certainty gives them permission to explore closeness without feeling trapped. This is why self-assured energy is so powerful. It shifts the dynamic from dependence to mutual respect. You're not trying to fix them or prove your worth. You're not negotiating your value. You're standing in your truth, and that challenges them in the most loving way possible. It tells them, I am not afraid of your distance. I am not defined by your response. I know who I am, and I choose to stay open. That energy is irresistible because it's rare. Most people react to avoidance with insecurity. They chase, demand, or withdraw. Few remain steady, and it's that steadiness that breaks the pattern. Certainty creates attraction because it dissolves fear. When you are certain of your own worth, you no longer depend on someone else's closeness to validate it. That emotional independence creates a field of confidence that naturally draws others in. It's like a lighthouse that doesn't chase ships. It stands firm, guiding them home. The avoidant may drift away temporarily, but your consistency becomes a point of reference. A reminder that connection doesn't have to mean chaos. Over time, that certainty invites trust, and trust invites closeness. But certainty doesn't mean rigidity. It's not about being unmoved or emotionally closed. True certainty is flexible, it bends without breaking. It's strength wrapped in compassion. It's being able to say, I understand why. Our need for space, and I respect it. But I won't abandon myself while you figure it out. That balance between empathy and firmness is the sweet spot where attraction thrives. The more grounded you are in your truth, the more an avoidant feels permission to explore theirs. Your energy becomes a mirror of what they secretly desire, feel solid within themselves and safe in love. Certainty calls them forward. It reminds them that emotional safety doesn't come from control, it comes from presence. And in that moment, attraction transcends chemistry. It becomes connection built on trust, authenticity, and unwavering confidence. Love without boundaries breeds disconnection. It sounds paradoxical because we're taught that love means giving freely, forgiving endlessly, and accommodating the needs of the person we care about. But when love has no edges, when it bends too easily to avoid conflict or discomfort, it stops feeling safe. It becomes unpredictable, ungrounded, and eventually unworthy of respect. For an avoidant person who is already hyper-attuned to losing their autonomy, love without boundaries doesn't feel freeing, it feels suffocating. What they crave isn't limitless affection, it's trust in the other person's strength. Avoidance instinctively tests the emotional structure of the relationship, not intentionally or maliciously, but as a way to feel out whether the connection is stable enough to handle their fear. When boundaries are unclear, they interpret that lack of firmness as emotional instability. If you keep saying yes when you mean no, if you keep giving more, even when it drains you, the avoidant doesn't feel love, they feel pressure. The space they desperately need to feel safe collapses, and in that collapse, they retreat even further. Boundaries are not barriers. They're not punishments or ultimatums. They're clarity. They are the invisible lines that define what is healthy, what is safe, and what is sustainable in a relationship. When you hold those lines with grace and consistency, you create a sense of containment, a framework that allows both people to feel secure. For someone avoidant, this kind of containment is vital. It shows them that love can exist without chaos. It proves that closeness doesn't mean losing identity or control. Without boundaries, love becomes lopsided. One person overfunctions while the other withdraws. The one who gives too much believes they're proving loyalty. But in truth, they're reinforcing the avoidant's fear that closeness means obligation and love means sacrifice. When you continually meet their distance with pursuit, their silence with overcommunication, or their hesitation with reassurance, you unintentionally tell them, you don't have to show uphill, carry the emotional weight for both of us. That message doesn't draw them in, it validates their avoidance. They stay distant because your unbounded giving confirms that they don't need to risk vulnerability. Boundaries, on the other hand, invite mutual responsibility. They say, I value this connection, but I value myself within it too. When you calmly state your needs, when you express what is and isn't acceptable, you send a powerful message. Love is not submission, it's partnership. That kind of strength challenges an avoidant in the best possible way. It tells them that they can't hide behind their pattern forever. It reminds them that you will not sacrifice your truth for their comfort, and that real intimacy requires both people to stand fully in who they are. Avoidants respect what is real. They might resist it at first, but ultimately, they are drawn to those who can hold emotional boundaries with confidence and compassion. That strength helps them feel safe enough to come closer, because beneath their independence is a quiet longing for someone who won't collapse under pressure, someone who can meet their distance with presence instead of panic. Boundaries create that safety. They let the avoidant know, you can have your space, but I will not disappear. I will honor you, but I will also honor me. Love without boundaries tries to save people. Love with boundaries empowers them. When you hold your ground with kindness, you model emotional maturity. You demonstrate that connection doesn't require losing yourself. You teach through example that love can be both spacious and strong, both accepting and discerning. And in that space of balance, something beautiful happens. The avoidant begins to feel a new kind of safety. Not the safety that comes from distance, but the safety that comes from structure. Boundaries are love in action. They say, I care about you enough to stay authentic. I respect you enough not to lie with my silence. That integrity becomes magnetic. It draws the avoidant out of avoidance because it creates a relationship worth trusting, a connection where love has depth, dignity, and direction. Without boundaries, love dissipates into confusion. With them, it becomes a force that heals, transforms, and connects two people in truth rather than fear. Emotional polarity drives connection. It is the invisible current that keeps relationships alive, dynamic, and deeply magnetic. Polarity is not about power or control, it's about balance. It's the natural dance between different emotional energies, closeness and space, vulnerability and strength, pursuit and retreat. Every relationship breathes through this rhythm. When polarity is lost, the connection becomes flat, predictable, or suffocating. When it is present, both people feel alive, curious, and drawn toward one another. In relationships with avoidant individuals, polarity is not just important, it's essential. Avoidants often fear being consumed by emotional intensity. Their instinct is to pull back the moment things feel too heavy or invasive. But when the dynamic becomes overly accommodating, when the other person tries too hard to soothe, fix, or close the distance, it actually kills attraction. The avoidant feels smothered and instinctively retreats and more. To maintain polarity, you must resist the urge to neutralize every moment of tension. You must learn to hold your emotional ground and let the contrast exist. Polarity is what creates emotional electricity. It's the spark that happens when two people bring different, complementary energies into a shared space. For the avoidant, that means being met by someone who embodies emotional steadiness rather than emotional neediness. If you chase them, you collapse the polarity. But when you remain calm and confident in your energy, you create a natural pull that invites them back in. They begin to feel safe enough to re-engage, not because you demanded it, but because your grounded presence rebalances the energy. This dynamic is not about playing games or withholding affection. It's about understanding emotional physics. When one person withdraws, the other often leans in. When one over-pursues, the other inevitably retreats. True mastery in relationships comes from learning to regulate your own energy rather than reacting to the other person's movements. You don't chase closeness, you embody openness. You don't demand connection, you radiate stability. That balance restores polarity and creates space for authentic intimacy to return. Avoidants often test the boundaries of emotional polarity unconsciously. They pull back to see if the connection will collapse without their constant presence. If it does, it confirms their fear that love equals dependence. But when the other person remains strong, loving, and patient without shrinking or chasing, the avoidant feels something new, attraction rooted in respect. They start to associate closeness with safety, not suffocation. The polarity between your calm assurance and their need for space creates a rhythm that draws them forward. This is why healthy polarity requires emotional maturity. It's not about dominance or submission, it's about resonance. You can love deeply without overextending. You can give space without withdrawing love. You can challenge without shaming. These contrasts keep the relationship vibrant and honest. They remind both people that intimacy isn't built through sameness, it's built through balance. Think of polarity like the interplay between the ocean and the shore. The waves advance and retreat, but neither tries to overtake the other. The movement between closeness and distance, expression and silence creates beauty and rhythm. When one force overwhelms the other, the system becomes stagnant or destructive. The same is true in relationships. If you over-pursue an avoidant, you erode the natural flow. If you disengage completely, you break the circuit. But if you hold your position present, open, self-assured, the dynamic finds harmony again. Polarity also keeps desire alive. It prevents the relationship from devolving into comfort without connection. When two people stand in their authentic energies grounded, one exploring, one expressing, one listening, Emotional exchange stays dynamic. This movement mirrors the rhythm of life itself, expansion and contraction, inhale and exhale. It's this tension, held with respect and trust, that keeps love vital. So in the dance with an avoidant, don't try to erase the distance or force constant closeness. Instead, honor the polarity. Let your strength invite their openness. Let your presence call them into connection without ever begging for it. The contrast between your stability and their hesitance becomes the magnet that slowly pulls them out of avoidance and into awareness. In that balance, connection thrives not from control or compliance, but from the powerful rhythm of emotional polarity that keeps love alive, evolving, and endlessly magnetic. Healing happens through discomfort. It is one of the most profound truths in both personal growth and relationships, yet it's the one we resist the most. Our instinct as human beings is to avoid pain, to protect ourselves from emotional tension, to seek harmony even when that harmony is built on silence or suppression. But healing is not born from comfort. It's born from confrontation, the kind that brings buried fears, old wounds, and unconscious patterns to the surface so they can finally be seen. In relationships, especially with someone who has avoidant tendencies, this principle becomes the pathway to transformation. Avoidants live in the realm of emotional protection. Their entire defense system is designed to prevent discomfort. They avoid deep conversations, intense emotions, or vulnerable moments, not because they don't care, but because they fear what will happen if they allow themselves to truly feel. Somewhere in their past, closeness was linked to pain, maybe rejection, control, or abandonment, and their mind learned to equate emotional intensity with danger. So they retreat, believing that avoidance is safety. But true safety isn't found in distance, it's found in authenticity. And authenticity can only exist when discomfort is welcomed, rather than feared. When you challenge an avoidant with love, you are inviting them into discomfort, but it's sacred discomfort. It's not about arguing, demanding, or forcing emotion. It's about holding up a mirror to their pattern and saying, I see what you're doing, and I care enough not to let you keep running. This kind of challenge is uncomfortable for both people. It forces the avoidant to face their fear of vulnerability, and it forces you to stand firm in your truth without resorting to control. Yet in that friction, something powerful happens, growth. Healing doesn't come from avoiding tension, it comes from leaning into it consciously. When an avoidant begins to feel safe enough to sit in the discomfort of being seen, when they realize that vulnerability won't destroy them, their nervous system starts to rewire. The emotional walls that once protected them begin to soften. This process is not linear. It's messy, filled with moments of retreat and re-engagement. But every time they stay present just a little long, every time they choose openness instead of withdrawal, healing takes another step forward. Discomfort is the crucible in which love matures. If everything is easy, predictable, and smooth, there's no depth, no transformation. The moments that challenge us, when communication breaks down, when fears surface, when differences collide, the exact moments that reveal whether a relationship has the foundation to evolve. For an avoidant, this means learning that discomfort doesn't signal danger, it signals growth. For you, it means learning that discomfort doesn't mean rejection. It means transformation is happening. To walk this path requires compassion and strength. Compassion, because you must understand the fear beneath avoidance. Strength, because you must refuse to enable it. When you allow someone to avoid forever, you participate in their stagnation. But when you gently and consistently call them forward, when you refuse to let fear dictate the relationship, you become a catalyst for their healing. You show them that love can hold both safety and challenge, both peace and passion. Healing through discomfort is not about pain for pain's sake. It's about allowing truth to replace illusion. It's the process of unlearning the belief that love equals loss or that connection means control. It's about breaking patterns that have kept two people from experiencing real intimacy. Every uncomfortable conversation, every moment of vulnerability, every time you hold your ground instead of retreating, you're teaching the nervous system a new truth, that connection can coexist with freedom, that honesty can exist without rejection. Growth demands friction. The seed must break before it becomes a tree. The heart must open before it can expand. Discomfort is not the enemy, it's the bridge between fear and freedom. When you and an avoidant can walk across that bridge together with patience, respect, and courage, the relationship stops being a cycle of distance and starts becoming a journey of awakening. Healing happens there in the raw, imperfect space where love and discomfort meet, where walls crumble, and where both souls learn to trust that the fire of truth will not burn them, but refine them. When it all comes down to it, love is not about chasing comfort, it's about pursuing truth. It's about standing in the fire of growth and daring to let it refine you. Every relationship is a mirror, revealing where we still hide, where we still cling, and where we still fear to love openly. To truly connect with someone who avoids closeness, you must rise into your own wholeness first. You cannot coax them into love by playing small. You can only inspire them through the strength of your authenticity, your certainty, your unwavering boundaries, and your willingness to challenge them into presence. You see, when you challenge an avoidant, you're not attacking their weakness, you're calling forth their strength. You're saying, I believe in the part of you that's bigger than your fear. When you hold that belief with love, you become the lighthouse that guides them home, not through force, but through faith. Because healing doesn't happen in comfort, it happens in courage. And courage, my friends, is love in motion. So, if you find yourself loving someone who runs, don't chase. Stand tall, hold your truth, speak with compassion, challenge with love. Let your certainty be their safety and your presence be their permission to return. That's how love transforms, not through desperation, but through divine alignment. Every great relationship is built on two souls who refuse to let fear write their story. Be one of them. Be the person who stays grounded when others pull away, who loves deeply without losing themselves, who holds space for healing without rescuing. That is real power. That is divine love. And that is the kind of connection that not only keeps someone, it awakens them. Thank you for allowing me to share this truth with you today. May you walk out of here not just inspired, but activated. May you see love not as a battlefield, but as a sacred classroom for your evolution. And may you never forget every challenge in love is an invitation to become more of who you really are. So go out there and live it. Love boldly, stand firmly, grow fearlessly. Because when you honor both your boundaries and your heart, you don't just keep love, you elevate it. Thank you for your presence, your openness, and your courage to grow. Stay strong, stay compassionate, and stay awake. Until we meet again, keep becoming the love that no one has to run from. Goodbye, and God bless.